Every spring, millions of people spend money on seeds and seedlings, plant them, harvest them once, and then go back to the store and do it all over again the following year. Same plants, same money, same cycle. Nobody ever told them it does not have to work that way. There is a category of vegetable that breaks that cycle completely. You plant it once, it comes back on its own. It regrows, it spreads, it multiplies. And it does all of this while most gardeners are still standing in the seed aisle trying to figure out what to buy again. Today we are covering 10 of them. Plant once, harvest forever vegetables that thrive in containers, in garden beds, in neglected corners of your yard. And the one at number 7 is the one that has been feeding families for centuries, and almost nobody grows it anymore. Stay with me until the end, because that one changes everything. Before vegetable number 1, drop in the comments right now. Are you growing in containers or in the ground? Because that answer shapes everything about which of these performs best for your setup. I read every comment. Tell me now. Vegetable number 1, asparagus. Asparagus is the longest living food plant most people will ever grow. One established crown produces spears every single spring for 20 to 30 years. Not 3 years, not 5 years. 20 to 30 years of free vegetables from one planting decision made on one afternoon. Here is what the seed catalog never puts on the front page. Asparagus requires patience up front. Year 1, you plant and you wait. Year 2, you harvest lightly. Year 3 onward, you harvest freely, and it rewards you more every season than the season before. The gardeners who understand this plant asparagus once and eat from it for the rest of their lives. The gardeners who do not understand this buy asparagus at $4 to $6 per pound every spring indefinitely. Jersey Knight and Jersey Supreme are the all-male hybrid varieties that produce 3 times more spears than older varieties and resist rust and fusarium, the 2 diseases that ended asparagus beds in previous generations. Plant all-male hybrids. The difference in production is not subtle. Hardy zones 3 through 8, full sun, raised beds or deep containers, minimum 18 inches depth for root development. Amend soil with compost deeply before planting. Feed with a balanced fertilizer each spring after the harvest window closes. That is the complete annual care requirement for a plant that will still be feeding you in 25 years. Vegetable number 2, walking onion, Egyptian tree onion. Most people have never heard this name. Every person who grows it never stops. The walking onion does something no other allium does. Instead of producing a flower at the top of its stalk, it produces a cluster of small bulbils, miniature onions, that grow heavy, bend the stalk toward the ground, touch the soil, and plant themselves. The plant literally walks across your garden, relocating itself, spreading without any help from you, producing harvestable onions at every stage of the process. The bulbils at the top are edible. The green tops are edible. Use them exactly like scallions from early spring through late fall. The underground bulbs are edible. This plant produces 3 different harvests from 3 different parts simultaneously. Hardy zones 3 through 9, virtually indestructible. Tolerates drought, poor soil, neglect, and hard freezes that would kill standard onions. Plant 1 cluster in spring. By fall, it has produced top sets. By the following spring, those top sets have rooted and become new plants. Within 2 seasons, one original planting becomes a self-sustaining colony that requires nothing from you except occasional harvesting. No replanting, no reseeding, no annual investment. It just keeps walking and keeps producing. Vegetable number 3, sorrel. French sorrel. This is one of the most productive perennial vegetables almost nobody in modern gardening grows. And the gap between how useful it is and how rarely it appears in gardens is one of the strangest oversights in home food production. French sorrel emerges in early spring, sometimes while there is still frost on the ground, and produces large, lemony, bright green leaves from March through November in most zones. The flavor is sharp and citrus forward, unlike anything else in the vegetable garden. It goes into salads, soups, sauces, and egg dishes. In French cooking, it has been a fundamental kitchen ingredient for centuries. In American home gardens, it is almost invisible. Here is what makes it exceptional as a perennial food plant. Cut it back completely, and it regrows from the root within 10 to 14 days. You can harvest it to the ground 4 to 6 times per season, and it comes back each time thicker and more productive than before. The root system deepens every year. By year 3, an established sorrel plant is producing more edible leaf than most households can consume. Hardy zones 3 through 9, partial shade to full sun. Drought tolerant once established. Divide every 3 to 4 years in early spring to maintain vigor. Each division is a fully productive plant. One original purchase becomes unlimited plants indefinitely. Vegetable number 4. Rhubarb. Rhubarb is one of the earliest harvests in the food garden. Stalks are ready in April and May when almost nothing else is producing anything. For gardeners who grow it, that early window is one of the most valued moments of the spring. For gardeners who do not grow it, that window passes every year without them realizing what they missed. A single rhubarb crown planted this season will produce harvestable stalks for 10 to 15 years with minimal intervention. It emerges earlier each spring. It spreads outward slowly and deliberately. Every 4 to 5 years it is divided. Each division becomes a fully productive new plant, free indefinitely. Victoria is the most reliable variety for flavor across most American growing zones. Crimson Red produces the deepest red stalks with slightly sweeter flavor than green varieties. Canada Red maintains excellent color through cooking, which most red varieties do not. Never harvest more than 1/3 of the stalks in any single season. Leave the rest to feed the crown through summer. Never eat the leaves. They contain oxalic acid at toxic levels. The stalks are the harvest and only the stalks. Hardy zones 3 through 8. Rhubarb actually requires cold winters to perform. It needs a dormancy period below 40 degrees Fahrenheit to reset for the following season. In zones 9 and 10, it struggles. Everywhere else, it is one of the most reliable perennial food plants available. Vegetable number 5. Artichoke. Globe artichoke. A single globe artichoke plant in full production is one of the most dramatic and productive food plants you can grow in a container or garden bed. The plants reach 4 to 5 feet tall, with deeply divided silver-green leaves that look architectural even when not producing. When they produce, the flower buds, the artichokes, emerge from the center, and side shoots in late spring and again in fall in warmer zones. 2 harvests per season from one plant. Fresh artichokes in grocery stores cost $2.50 to $4 each and are available only during narrow seasonal windows. A productive artichoke plant yields 6 to 12 artichokes per season per plant. At grocery store pricing, that is $15 to $48 worth of produce from one plant annually, indefinitely. Imperial Star is the variety that produces in year 1 from seed. Most artichoke varieties require 2 seasons before producing. For container growing, Imperial Star removes the waiting period entirely. Hardy zones 7 through 11 as a true perennial. In zones 6 and below, grow in large containers and overwinter in a protected space, or treat as an annual and start from seed each spring. It still produces that same season if started early indoors. I want to stop here for a moment because something has been sitting with me while putting this list together. There is a way of understanding perennial food plants, why our ancestors chose them, how they kept families fed through hard seasons without replanting every year, what they knew about working with plants that work back, that you simply cannot find in any modern gardening book. I have looked, I found it somewhere else. A source so old that the people who wrote it were growing food before the United States existed as a country, nearly 400 years old. What it describes about perennial vegetables and how our ancestors actually built food systems that sustain themselves without a seed store or a grocery run completely reframed how I think about every plant on this list. I studied that source and wrote it all down myself, so you would not have to go digging through 400 years of text on your own. If you want to, you can check our channel store. It is there. Vegetable number 6, green onion, bunching onion, Allium fistulosum. This is the simplest perennial food system in this entire list, and the one that delivers immediate, practical value from day one. Bunching onions do not form a bulb. They grow as a clump of upright green shoots that are harvested from the outside, while the center continues producing new growth. Cut what you need. Leave the center, it regrows. You harvest again in 2 to 3 weeks. This cycle continues indefinitely without replanting, without reseeding, without any intervention beyond occasional watering. Every 2 to 3 years, divide the clump. Each division is a fully productive new plant. One original planting becomes 4 plants. 4 plants become 16. The math compounds in your favor every season, and it costs you nothing. Hardy zones 6 through 9 as an evergreen perennial. In colder zones, the tops die back in winter, but the roots survive and regrow in early spring, often the first edible green in the garden. Beltsville bunching and evergreen, hardy white, are the varieties with the best cold tolerance and most consistent regrowth. Use them exactly as you would use scallions from any grocery store. The difference is these cost nothing after the first purchase, and they never run out. Vegetable number 7, sea kale, Cram maritima. This is the one I promised at the beginning, and almost nobody in modern gardening talks about it. Sea kale is a coastal perennial vegetable that has been harvested from the wild and cultivated in kitchen gardens across Britain and Northern Europe for over 400 years. It was considered one of the most valuable vegetables a family could have, growing near their home, not just for its productivity, but for the specific window it occupies. Sea kale produces its harvest in early spring, before almost any other vegetable in the garden is ready. In the hungry gap between winter stores and summer abundance, sea kale was what people ate. The young blanched shoots that emerge in March and April taste like a cross between asparagus and tender cabbage, mild, sweet, with none of the bitterness of mature brassica leaves. You force them in darkness by covering the crown with a pot or bucket in late winter. The shoots that emerge without light are pale, tender, and sweeter than anything produced in open air. Unforced leaves later in the season are also edible, cooked like kale or collards. Sea kale grows from root cuttings called thongs, planted in early spring. It establishes in year 1, produces lightly in year 2, and from year 3 onward it is one of the most productive and reliable perennial vegetables in the garden. Hardy zones 4 through 9, full sun, well-draining, slightly sandy soil. It evolved on coastal shingle and does not tolerate waterlogged roots. Once established, it is exceptionally drought-tolerant. The crown lives for 20 years or more, deepening its root system and increasing production every season. The fact that it has nearly disappeared from American home gardens while remaining a respected kitchen garden staple in Britain for centuries is one of the more significant losses in modern food culture. Knowing it exists puts you ahead of almost every gardener growing food in this country right now. Vegetable number 8, horseradish. Plant horseradish once, and the only challenge you will ever face with it is keeping it where you want it. A single horseradish root planted in spring becomes a vigorous, deep-rooted perennial that sends up large, bold leaves all season and produces more harvestable root than most households need by fall. Any piece of root left in the soil when you harvest regrows the following spring. Any piece of root you miss becomes a new plant. This is a plant that propagates itself from its own forgotten fragments. The flavor of fresh homegrown horseradish is categorically different from jarred commercial horseradish. Commercial horseradish is processed, stabilized with vinegar, and sits on shelves for months before purchase. Fresh horseradish grated at home has a heat and sharpness that the jarred version only approximates. People who taste fresh horseradish for the first time consistently report that they did not know that was what horseradish was supposed to taste like. Hardy zones 3 through 9. Plant in a container if you want to control its spread. This is one of the few vegetables where container growing is recommended not for space reasons but for containment reasons. Full sun to partial shade. Feed with nitrogen-rich fertilizer in spring to encourage leaf and root development. Harvest roots in fall after the first frost. Cold sweetens the flavor. Vegetable number 9, lovage. Lovage is a perennial herb vegetable that tastes exactly like celery. Every part of it, the leaves, the stems, the seeds, but grows 5 to 6 feet tall, comes back every spring without replanting, and produces more usable material from one plant than a household full of celery purchases would cover in a season. Fresh celery is $2 to $3 per bunch in grocery stores. It is 95% water, wilts within days of purchase, and requires consistent watering that most home gardeners struggle to maintain. Lovage produces the same flavor, the same culinary function, and the same versatility. in soups, stocks, salads, and cooking, from a plant that is drought-tolerant, frost-hardy, and completely self-sustaining once established. Use the leaves fresh or dried, exactly as you would use celery leaves. Use the hollow stems as natural drinking straws in savory drinks. Use the seeds as a celery seed substitute in spice blends. This plant covers every culinary use of celery, from one perennial that requires almost no care. Hardy zones 3 through 8, full sun to partial shade, rich, moist soil for best production. Divide every 3 to 4 years. In ideal conditions, it self-seeds and produces volunteer plants you can transplant anywhere in the garden. Once you have Lovage established, you have it permanently. Vegetable number 10, Turkish Rocket, Bunias orientalis. Most gardeners will never encounter this plant in a garden center. It does not appear in mainstream seed catalogs. It has no marketing behind it, and it is one of the most productive, most nutritious, most completely self-sustaining perennial food plants that can grow in an American garden. Turkish Rocket is a member of the Brassica family that grows as a vigorous perennial in zones 3 through 9. It produces edible leaves from early spring through late fall, slightly peppery when young, stronger when mature, cooked like mustard greens or eaten raw in small quantities in salads. The young flower shoots in spring are harvested and cooked exactly like broccoli rabe and taste nearly identical. It grows in poor soil. It grows in partial shade. It tolerates drought that would end most food plants. It self-seeds prolifically, producing volunteer plants throughout the garden that you can transplant, share, or leave to expand your planting on their own schedule. Once you have it established, you will never be without it. A plant this productive and this self-sustaining has no commercial future because it cannot be sold repeatedly. You buy it once. It feeds you indefinitely. That is not a business model any seed company or grocery store can build revenue on. It is, however, exactly the kind of plant that belongs in every food garden in this country. Here is the shift that changes how you think about your food garden permanently. Annual vegetables are a subscription. You pay every year to renew access to your own harvest. Perennial vegetables are an asset. You invest once and the return compounds every season without additional cost. The 10 plants on this list represent a food garden that gets more productive every year while requiring less from you every year. More harvest, less replanting, less spending, less dependence on stores that charge full price for food you could be growing yourself. That is not just a gardening strategy. That is a different relationship with your food entirely. 2 things to do before you close this video. First, pick one plant from this list and commit to planting it this season, not all 10. 1. The gardeners who pick one and plant it this year are the ones eating from it for the next decade. The gardeners who bookmark this video and wait plant nothing. Second, tell me in the comments which one you chose and what zone or state you are in. I want to know what you are working with so I can make sure the content I put out next actually applies to where you live. Subscribe to Gaia Lost Vault right now. Every week we go into the knowledge that mainstream gardening content, grocery stores, and seed companies have no interest in giving you. The kind of knowledge that makes your garden work for you instead of the other way around. You do not want to find this channel 6 months from now and wish you had been here from the beginning. Go plant something that feeds you forever. I will see you in the next one.